Welcome back to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. Today we're in Goshen Township in Clermont County, Ohio, talking with Linda and Rick about the Goshen Township Historical Museum. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Welcome.
Now tell me about this museum.
Well, our earliest information about this house was built around 1836. This house has been through several different families, probably 5 or 6. Most notably, Dr. Lyman and his family. Dr. Lyman was a physician in the 1850s, and he built a small addition to the house in the back called his surgery. Prior to this, most doctors in Goshen would use a doctor's bag and have to travel from house to house. When Dr. Lyman built this surgery on the back, it meant that there was now a doctor's office, so to speak. And it totally changed the way people could receive medical treatment. Now, instead of your treatment depending on everything a doctor could fit in his bag, he now had a surgery, so to speak, so he could perform much more complicated or detailed medical care, medical practice on his patients. The surgery is gone, but the core house remains the same, and it's now the museum and home to the Goshen Township Historical Society.
And what exactly happens here in the museum? I know that you have visitors, but tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we're open on a regular basis on Tuesdays, and then we'll be open to the public on special events. And we also are open to the school children at regular times of the year. We consider ourselves a very important partner to Goshen School District, and the children come here and also to our log cabin for history projects every year.
Now, if you go through the house, you go in, and then when you go upstairs, there are 2 very interesting rooms with some really cool historical stuff that's in there. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. In the master bedroom, we've set up a display of some of our vintage clothing. We have an amazing collection from a lot of different areas, most notably the Victorian era. And what we have set up right now are some very beautiful and delicate Victorian era underpinnings. So camisoles and pantaloons and some night dresses and very pretty things. Also on display up there are some very rough and rugged utensils that it took to care for those items. Incredibly heavy sad irons, which were solid iron irons. Didn't plug in back in those days. They were heated on coals or in the fireplace, and so you had to be very careful that you didn't scorch those really delicate items. Also a washboard, and the washboard we have up here is kind of unique because it's a glass washboard, and that made it much more practical to wash very delicate cotton and silk items up there. And even shoes that were made at home often, and we have a shoe last and some metal shoe forms that would be put on the last to make whatever size shoes you wanted to make that day. One thing that you'll notice is most of the shoe lasts, the iron shoe form, doesn't have a left or a right. It was only after the Civil War that they started paying attention to an actual left and right, because they realized after that point how important it was for soldiers to be marching in properly fitted shoes. What you see upstairs are some of the early forms, and back then they just made it very simply. Every size, every shoe was the same.
Now tell me about the other room. There's another room that's modeled after a child's room.
That's
Can you tell us what's in that room?
In that room, you'll see a couple of pieces that are really important to children of the late 19th century. We have a couple of doll houses in there that were handmade by some local artisans. And doll houses back then were always great play pieces, and children today love doll houses. But in the late 19th century, they served a very important purpose as well. They were training tools, and they would educate children, little girls, on how to run a house, how to furnish a house, how to be a hostess, and how to decorate a home. And they were preparing them for being wives and mothers and hostesses when they took their place in society. Also up there are some beautifully framed photographs of Aurelia Cook, who was a noted school teacher, a beloved member of our town, and she was from a farm family. This was a family who did not have a lot of money. She grew up in what is now the restored Goshen log cabin. And these are pictures of Miss Cook from age 3 up to 6, 7 years old. These were taken every year, and what makes them so precious is it shows that this family took the time and some very limited resources to have beautiful photographs taken of their only daughter, their only child every year. Very precious to them, and it would have been a great expense to them, and yet I think it really shows how important it was to capture this pretty little girl's picture every year. Those pictures actually were sold as part of her estate after her death, and the person who purchased them only wanted the frames. She, though, recognized that these were beautiful pictures of a very important little girl, and so she saved those pictures, and we only just recently acquired the original photographs last year. So we're very happy to have that treasure upstairs in our children's room.
Now, when you come downstairs, there's another room that has some beautiful paintings in them. Can you tell us about the paintings and the artists behind the paintings?
The artist is John Glancy, and John was a notable artist in this area. He lived in Goshen all his life. He was a bachelor, never married, never had children. He passed away in 1974 and apparently took his own life. The interesting thing about John is that he was a prolific painter. He is moderately talented artist, but it is the sentiment that goes into his paintings that makes them so special. There are hundreds and hundreds of Glancy paintings in the Goshen area. The joke is that you're not really from Goshen unless you own at least one Glancy. John would gift a lot of these paintings to people. He would paint a picture of your house and then give it to you. Other people might pay for a Glancy painting. Most of the paintings are landscapes. We have a few still lifes. John didn't paint people. I don't know if that was because of talent or it wasn't comfortable, it just wasn't his comfort zone. But we have a great collection here. We had an art show a couple of years ago and invited people to come in and share their Glancys with us. We filled that room, we filled another room and spilled out outside. So there are lots and lots of Glancys out there, and we're really fortunate to have over a dozen of them here.
Awesome, awesome. And Rick, I know that we were talking about some famous people, notable people from Goshen. As you leave out of the room with all of the paintings and you walk into the other room, there are some pretty important people that have their pictures on the walls. Can you tell us about those people?
We're going to talk about John Bowl first.
Okay.
John Bowl was a foster child who came to Goshen to live with his siblings. His father was a disabled American veteran from World War I and could not financially take care of the family. So they moved in with a fine family here in Goshen. John graduated in 1940 from high school, then Miami University. In 1943, he left college to join the Army Air Forces to train as a fighter pilot. And in 1944, he received his commission, his wings, and orders to report to the European theater of World War II. In May of '44, he got one of the new P-51 Mustang fighter planes. 1 month later, in an aerial dogfight with German fighter planes, he shot down his first plane. 4 weeks later, took down his fifth, and thus joined the elite ranks of an American fighting ace. How unique is an ace? In our country's history, we had over 60,000 combat fighter pilots. Only 2% obtained the ranking of an ace. As the war won in '44, his aerial victories increased steadily. In one battle, he took down 3 planes without firing a shot. He maneuvered a German pilot into an aerial collision, and then he caused 2 other planes to crash into each other. On November the 16th, 1944, as he was leading his squadron into combat, he developed difficulties with the airplane, was forced to fly back to his home formation. On the return to flight, he caught sight of an enemy bomber. Mechanical problems or not, he went after the bomber. Prior to overtaking it, his peripheral vision picked up 12 enemy fighters heading directly for him. First, he dispatched the bombers, sending it flaming from the sky. And then he flew the formation of 12 enemy fighters, scattering them. In the course of the next 5 minutes of combat, he'd had 3 more kills. 2 probables, the fact they went down 2, and 2 damaged. Of the 13 planes he encountered, 8 were out of action. His 4 confirmed victories that day gave him 21 and thus made him the leading ace of the 15th Army Air Force, the leading ace of the Mediterranean Theater, and the leading ace in the state of Ohio. After the war, he came back to Goshen to live and taught school for a couple of years. In 1948, he was recalled to active duty, what was now called the United States Air Force. He was serving the wars at Korea and Vietnam. And at his retirement in 1977 as the base commander of the McClellan Air Force Base in Sacramento, California. Sadly, in 1987, John passed away and was buried with full military honors in a national cemetery in Massachusetts. That's Sam Lever. Next to Sam Lever, a baseball great. Sam was a school teacher here, and he played baseball on an amateur status. At the age of 25, he became a professional baseball player. and in 1899 got his major league career started with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Despite having arm trouble year after year, he went on to win 18 ball games a year, winning twice as many games as he lost. He helped the Pirates win pennants in 1901, 2, and 3. In 1903, they went into the very first World Series in history. They were expected to win it, but Sam developed arm trouble. He fooled around with a shotgun before the World Series and hurt his shoulder. Should not have played. But one of the pitchers could not play also. He went insane, and he had to pitch. He lost both games, the only negative factor to his brilliant career after that. He went on to win 195 ball games and lost 100, and his winning percentage of 66% is in the top 10 in baseball history. He had a sparkling 2.47 earned run average. He's in the top 25 in baseball history. Now, Sam Lieber was a good friend of baseball's greatest shortstop, Hannes Wagner. And Hannes Wagner often came here to Goshen to be with his buddy over the years. So Sam Lieber is one of the great baseball pitchers in baseball history. He's not in the Hall of Fame, unfortunately, even though his record is better than half the pitchers at Cooperstown, New York. So that's Sam Lieber. So we have Johnny Vole and Sam Lieber.
Incredible men from Goshen. That's great. Now, can you also tell me, there is a big flag that's in that room with the pictures of these really, really famous men. Can you tell us about that flag?
That was a flag that the Goshen Civil War group took into battle. They fought many battles in the Civil War, and that's the flag they brought back with them when the war was over with. It was given to us about 25 years ago. This fellow's grandfather has served in that unit, so we proudly display that in there.
Thanks again so much for tuning in to today's edition of History in Your Own Backyard. Today we spent time in Goshen Township, right here in Clermont County, Ohio, learning all about the Goshen Township Historical Society Museum. We certainly hope that you enjoyed learning all about it. Remember, travel slowly and stop often. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.